They were still given their own leeway within the system to do your own thing. You know what I mean? Just give us what we owe. Submit to Caesar, give us our taxes, and that's it. You guys can do whatever you want to do in Jerusalem. You don't really care. It was not holy for them. They were like, they have to do whatever. So this was the problem, is that Jesus became a contradictory force to these ruling elite, Pharisees and Sadducees. He came to see an end to the way that they were doing things, the way they were lording and subjugating over people. He also came to bring a revision of God's law. Because the Pharisees and Sadducees had said that they were the holders, they were the only maintainers of the law. That if you wanted to know the law, you had to come through us. If you wanted to be saved and all of this and repent to God, you need to do it through us. We tell you how and when and where and what and so on and so forth. Jesus came to remove that out of their hands and give it back to the people. And put revisions into God's law that freed them from some of the craziness that they had put themselves under in their disobedience to God throughout the Old Testament. This was a big problem. Because I don't care who you are, I don't care what your message is, if you put yourself at direct contradiction to the ruling elite of the day, who are especially a small group who are using their vantage point and their power to lord over the rest of the people and to get rich and wealthy off the back of the people and to steal their resources and use them and subjugate them and keep them ignorant and so on and so forth. If you directly challenge that, you're going to be a problem. You're going to be a problem that has to be dealt with. It doesn't matter how great your message is. It doesn't matter how beautiful the thing that you're trying to bring to the people are. If it becomes a threat to their system that has been established, and if it comes to see an end to that, you will have problems. You will become a public enemy. They will try to get rid of you, silence you, and discredit you, and all of these things. And so Jesus put himself in this position with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So they decided this guy has to go. He has to go, seriously. So they tried tricking him on many occasions. They asked him questions like, should we pay taxes to Caesar? It's a setup. He saw it as a setup himself, because he knew if he said no, that would have been it. That's death. To rebel against Caesar in that time was at the cost of your life. So to say, no, don't pay taxes to Caesar, that's it. It would have been the end to him. They would have gotten rid of Jesus very quickly. They came and tried to accuse him of things that he was breaking the law, walking through the cornfield on Sabbath, so on and so forth, many things. And he came to tell them, I have come to fulfill the law, not to break it. Not one period or comma shall pass from the law until all is fulfilled through me. But he put himself in direct contradiction with them, and they said he had to go. And they decided that the easiest way, and I have to speed up because we're running out of time, and I'm nowhere near finished. They decided we have to get rid of him through crucifixion. To just make a long story short, the easiest way to get rid of Jesus was to crucify him, because not only did they kill him through crucifixion, but they also could discredit him. They could discredit him because the last thing that the Jews will ever believe in is a Messiah that was crucified. This is a laughingstock to them. I mean, this is very much a joke for them to say that our Messiah was crucified. Yeah, it's a contradiction. This is why Paul even said that the crucifixion was a stumbling block of the Jews. He himself was a scholar of the law of Moses, one of those. Before becoming Paul, he was Saul of Tarsus, one of the same Pharisees and Sadducees, one of the same of that leading elite group that Jesus spoke so much against. So they had to get rid of him by crucifixion, because if you crucify him, Paul tells it in Galatians, he lets the cat out of the bag when he says that Christ was crucified or cursed on behalf of the law to remove us from the curse of the law, for everything that hangeth on a tree is cursed. He's quoting Deuteronomy, which according to the law of Moses, if you crucify a criminal on the cross, they are cursed. In this life and in the hereafter. Whatever that comes in the next life is not for you. This is the worst penalty under the law of Moses, will be crucified. So they realized if we can crucify Jesus, no one will believe in him. That he's gone, his message is discredited. So when they came to Jesus and said, we're going to crucify you, crucifixion is in it. And he was not charged, by the way, with calling himself God. This is a little known fact. He was not crucified and charged for crucifixion after calling himself God, because really Caesar would not have cared. They had so many gods. Jesus can be one too. They would have said, sure, why not? We need another one. He does miracles, okay, sure, let's go. I mean, a God to them is nothing. The crime that he was brought up for was challenging the throne of Caesar, saying that he was the Messiah, challenging the throne of Caesar. As we see that was above the cross, here lieth the King of the Jews. You did not challenge Caesar's authority. You did so only at your death. So they decided to crucify him. When they came to Jesus and they're going to crucify you, what did Jesus do? Now, for a man that came and who was himself God in the flesh, so he knew what he was here for. He knew his purpose, that I have to sacrifice myself in order for humanity to be forgiven. Because if I don't, then they are all lost. They are all lost. But this is not the actions of Jesus that we see when he realizes crucifixion is going to happen. What does he do? He runs. He runs to Gethsemane, which if any of you have been to Jerusalem, anybody here been to Jerusalem, will know that the Garden of Gethsemane is not inside of the old city. It is out. You have to go out a little way to find the Garden of Gethsemane. He went there for what? He went there with his disciples and he told them what? Stay at the gate. Why? To defend them if they came and got him, because we know they were armed. We see this from Peter pulling out his sword when the soldiers came. They had weaponry. They were ready to go to war over this. And Jesus went and he said, I'm going down this little path. He went and he prayed. And he fell on his face and he prayed. And he prayed so fervently, it says that his sweat became as if it were drops of blood. Now the first thing I realized is that this prayer shows that Jesus himself was in need of something. And I knew that God, the Creator, needs nothing. He creates. That's what he does. He doesn't need anything. But Jesus needed something because he asked a very serious question. And his question was to God, Father, let this cup pass from me. Do not let them crucify me. Let this cup pass from me. Do not let them crucify me. But nevertheless, whatever is your will, that I'll do. Now this was a problem for me because I was like, no, wait a minute, no, that's not the question you need to be asking. Humanity's salvation hangs in the balance of that question. If God answers that question, then humanity is lost, according to Paul. Without Christ crucified, our faith is in vain. So this is the question that puts humanity in a balance point, if God had answered. So why even ask the question, if you know this is your reason? I came to very much realize that the reason Jesus asked this question is he understood the detriment to his message. This did not fulfill his purpose, it defeated it. He came to what? Fulfill the law of Moses. I cannot fulfill the law of Moses by being cursed as a criminal according to it. The law of Moses was to have one God and worship him alone, and to obey him and to obey his commandments and his law, which Jesus taught, that obey the law. Whoever breaks the least of the commandments will be the worst person in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever obeys the least of the commandments and teaches people to do so will be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. When Jesus was asked, how do I go to heaven? He said, obey the commandments. He didn't say believe in my crucifixion. He said, obey the commandments. So the law was sent for this reason. So Jesus knew if they crucify me, it's breaking the law. I go against everything that I've come for. So this is why he asked to be removed from him. And also, the law that he came to fulfill teaches us in Ezekiel that the soul that sins shall die. The soul that sins shall die. And that the Father cannot bear the burdens of the Son, nor can the Son bear the burdens of the Father. But to every person who works righteousness, that righteousness is upon them. But to every person who works wickedness, that wickedness is upon them. So I'm finding it very hard to see that God would spend so much time reiterating this law, sending it, perfecting it, putting all of this into place to just abolish it and say that all of it is contradictory to the very purpose that I sent you for. So I went to ask my textual critic professor, Benjamin's textual critic professor, Bob Jones. I was a senior at this time. And he told me that the Bible was a collection of books written by the hands of men and women. To just make the long story short, that the Bible was a collection of books written by the hands of men and women, and that they have inevitably left their fingerprints on it through the passage of time, how it's come down to us, and how it's been passed on through handwriting, how there have been changes that have been made. Yes, changes have been made. I've seen them with my own two eyes. I have been to some of the places where they keep these old documents, and I've looked at some of the pages that are contradictory and changing to each other with my own two eyes. So much so that scribes were arguing on the page of the book about what reading it should be. They were cussing each other out almost. He said, but what we have now is what the scholars have done to the best of their ability to get to. He said, but at its very outset, it's a human endeavor to put it together. So human endeavors are always going to be flawed. Any human endeavor is going to have the inherent flaw of the human in it. He said, but it is a book that is believed in by faith, and those who believe in it believe in it by faith, and it is that faith beyond the capability of understanding and reason and intellect that leads them to justification in the eyes of God. I asked him a very simple question. I said, is God perfect? Yes, without a doubt. No one would say that God is not perfect. God is perfect. I said, therefore, everything emanating from the perfect God should be perfect. His prophets should be perfect in that sense. His religion should be perfect in that sense. His book should be perfect in that sense. And the very thing which leads me to even understand God himself, you're telling me, is imperfect. So how can this come from a perfect God? Therefore, I left Christianity. I said, I can't. God is perfect. I cannot take imperfection and it lead me to perfection. It doesn't work that way around. So I left Christianity and started to study other religions. I have about 10 minutes and I'm done. I know we have some Q&A time, but I want to give you a chance. I studied Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Wiccan, Bushido. I wanted to find God's right way. So I studied other religions, every ism and wisdom and whatever have you. But there was one thing that I really wanted, and that was proof. My grandfather told me something as a young man that I have stuck to ever since I left Christianity. He told me, young man, he would always say, you know, when I would tell him I'm telling the truth, he would say, you know what, young man, the truth has an interesting characteristic. You know what it is? I would say, what? He said, it always comes with proof. The truth always comes with proof. Therefore, if you say the truth, you should always be ready to give proof. And if you don't have proof, then you don't have truth. Very, very clear. So my question to these religions and the religious leaders that I would meet was, do you have proof? I don't want to hear this whole believe thing anymore. No, because God gave me a reason for a reason. He gave me an intellect to understand. And I should not have to contradict that reason and intellect given to me by God in order to understand Him. They should work hand in hand. So I wanted proof, but I wanted tangibility. No, you put it here. Don't tell me proof. You're telling me the truth. You can't tell me proof. I need to see it. Show it. So I read a lot of religious texts. I read some of the Vedas. To say that you've read the Vedas in a lifetime is beyond any capability of any individual. But I did read the Bhagavad Gita and some of the basics of the Hindu theology. I read some of the teachings of Taoism and Confucius and Buddhism and Wiccan. I read the Book of Spells and I read the Bushido, which is the Hagakure, the Samurai Code of Conduct. But the point is, when I would come to a fact where I see the blatant contradiction between logic and reason, and the only way I can believe in this is I have to just believe, then that's when I would say I'm wrong. I would say that's it. And someone told me once that I'm a fool to say that I studied the world's religions in about a period of a year and a half and written most of them off. And I told him, I said, you're right, somebody's a fool. If you blindfold me and put 10 glasses of water in front of me and fill 9 of them with dirt, I take a sip of the dirty glass. I realize it's dirty. Who is the fool? The one who continues to drink the glass, hoping that the cup might be clean at the end, or the one who says, okay, this is dirty, let me keep looking for the clean glass. This was my search. Clean glass, toss it. Dirty glass, toss it. The problem is I didn't find the clean glass. When I read about Islam, which I did study Islam, it said that Muslims which is a derogatory word, worship a moon god in the box in the desert, and they beat their wives and they kill non-Muslims. The whole rampage. And I put that book down and I said, my God, I knew Muslims were crazy, but I never realized the scale. Because the only Muslim I'd ever seen was Ramzi Youssef on TV in the 93 World Trade Center bombings. He was the craziest looking person I've ever seen, and they do that to Muslims, unfortunately. If there's anybody Muslim does anything crazy, or you get accused of anything crazy, they're going to find the craziest picture they can find of you, the worst looking, they're going to post that everywhere. But that's all I knew, so I said, I left religion alone at 17 and went after the world. Because my friends were going to parties and, they were doing all the things that 17-year-olds do that don't have any other, reason for life. So I decided to do that. So I became a student of the world. Tupac had just been shot. Biggie had just died. The hip-hop scene in America, the hip-hop culture in America was blossoming and blooming at that time. So I became very much involved in the hip-hop lifestyle, which it is a lifestyle. For those people who are in it, it's a lifestyle. And I started going to parties and getting into fights. By the way, I had been taking martial arts since I was 14 because I was so small. and I had gotten a black belt in Jeet Kune Do, and I had an ankle problem, so I thought I was Bruce Lee reincarnated, and I was willing to prove it. I mean, if you wanted to challenge me, I was ready to give you